What's the future of American agriculture look like in terms of the crop inputs we use to make our crops grow? Will there be less synthetic fertility, less traditional chemistry, and more biologicals and bionutrients? I think so, but I'm going to talk to my guest, see what he thinks, coming up in this episode of The Business of Agriculture. Hey friends, the Business of Agriculture has a new sponsor. It's a company called New Fields Ag, a worldwide leader in biological planter box innovations. That's right. New Fields Ag has used farmer-focused research to create farmer-focused products. You can learn more by going to the newfieldsag.com website. That's newfieldsag.com for more information on award-winning crop performance products to help you farm better. Hey there, welcome to another fantastic episode of The Business of Agriculture. I got a great one for you today. This is a remote broadcast, if you will, because I'm coming at you from the headquarters of Redox BioNutrients in Burley, Idaho. Redox, as you know, sponsors my show. No, this is not going to be an infomercial. This is going to be a real live discussion about where the future is going. I've got Colton Moon. He is the president of this company. His father founded this company 31 years ago, working largely in specialty crop, then moving into turf, and now increasingly broadacre agriculture.
Correct.
So I put it out there, and this is not anything that's like, oh boy, you're at the headquarters, should you even do that? There's a lot of growth in this area. You guys have been around a long time, but there are like 2,000 companies now that are trying to be in this biological space. It's a hot space. It's got a boatload of investment pouring into it, a little less than it did a few years ago, but money was literally pouring into this space.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Well, that is true. There's a lot of money pouring into this space. I think there's technology advancement being had, low barriers to entry as far as regulation goes. So you have your bio or your pesticides, and then you have your fertilizers, and then biostimulants kind of sit right in the middle, right?
Yep.
And so there's no regulation either which way, and so they're trying to find that out. Low barriers to entry allow for a lot more companies.
And when you say barrier of entry, first off, you're talking the regulatory.
Yes.
If I want to roll out the next version of atrazine, I'm going to be a while.
Yes.
And I'm going to have some spending, and I'm going to have a lot of lab work, and I'm going to have a lot of government compliance to deal with.
Yep.
If I want to bring out the next bottle of something with some bugs and some bat poop and something else, and there are products that are about like that out there, all I got to do is put it in a jug and say it's a
have a fertilizer analysis and some basic, maybe you have your counts on there, and then register it with the state, and that's about it. No regulation under EPA or anything like that right now.
Talk about how the ease of entry and the cost of entry, it's kind of like podcasts. Aren't you realizing that there's just a bazillion of them out there?
Yeah.
And a bunch of them suck.
Well, yeah.
But not this one.
Yeah, well, I would say the more information or the more opportunities for companies to get out there are also allowing for technology advancements.
Yep.
You know, but at the same time, right, more information is getting out to the consumer, to the grower. And the hard part, right, is filtering that information. But the nice part is that there's our solutions out there to fight what's coming down the road. So
The opening that I said was, in the future, will we use less of these traditional things? We already are. You know, I'm a few years older than you, but I'm 20 years older than you, and I can tell you that I briefly remember the 70s, and I sure as heck remember the 80s. And the idea, when I talk to my suburban friends in Phoenix, Arizona, where I lived during the winter, and they say, well, these factory farms, they just use so much chemicals. I'm like, well, do you think it was more wholesome like 40 or 50 years ago? Oh, yes, I'm sure it was. I'm like, no. We flinged out stuff absolutely without any judicious application. We used harsher chemistry, and we're already better at it. I think in the next 5 to 10 years, we get double better than we are right now in terms of that.
Yeah, so I think we definitely have made advancements. I think we're improving on what we're using, on what is out there for growers to apply. You know, on the take for example in specialty crops, regulation in California is at a high, all-time high, and so we already understand what regulation can be. You know, from California's perspective, they already have nitrogen management programs that they have to prove out and show that they're applying a certain amount of nitrogen, and then in certain parts of California, they have to reduce nitrogen every year.
Right.
You know, and so. Those stuffs are already coming down the pipeline. It's happening in California. I can see it coming elsewhere.
I shot a video with your communications guy, Jim Morris, and I used that exact example, that nitrogen's the new boogeyman. And you know what? I'm pro-agriculture as pro-agriculture gets, but I can also admit where we've stubbed our toe. we have over-applied nitrogen.
Yes, over-applied nitrogen, and I mean, we've even seen studies ourselves where we're saying, okay, if you reduce your nitrogen by 10, 20, 50%, you should see also the decrease in yield by 10, 20, 50%. You're not seeing that. So
what's that tell you? We've been
over applying, and so companies that come out, and I'm not like, look, there's a lot of good companies. I'm not trying to knock anyone, but if you're just saying 5% reduction in nitrogen, and that's what your product can do.
You mean that your new product, you say, we allow you to reduce nitrogen by 5%. You could use rainwater and reduce your
correct. I'm just saying like that like there's we're over applying by so much that 5 to 10% reduction is really not much.
What do you think I believe here in we're recording this February of 2025. I believe, Colton, that by the year 2030 we're going to reduce applied nitrogen by half across the board.
I think
with no reduction in yield.
Yes, I think there's technology out there that definitely can do that. We ourselves have a patent-pending product, not trying to do an infomercial, but we do have a product where we're seeing great results at 50% of liquid nitrogen reduction.
What about the fact that, and this is where a lot of people, I've read the articles, and I work for a group called Extreme Ag where I'm in the field with these farmers. I read a thing, 35% of applied nitrogen actually gets into the plant. That means a full 2/3 of what we've put out there doesn't get to the plant. That's all I need to see.
Yeah.
Now I know there's not going to be such a thing as 100% efficiency, but when you're talking about 2/3, that's just.
Yeah, you got your nitrogen, but also you can put that onto phosphorus, you can put that into your potassium, your microbes. Like, it's not just nitrogen, it's all these other, nitrogen's the boogeyman right now.
Yep.
But it's a lot of other nutrients as well.
Is nitrogen the boogeyman, is that justified? I mean, we've overused it. Are we destroying, are children dying because we've overused nitrogen? I think it might be.
I think it's like, anytime, again, not trying to, going into muddy waters here, but anytime a politician can get his hands on something and run on it, that's what he's going to go after. Nitrogen's that right now. That's the boogeyman that he can run his campaigns on. I don't think it's necessarily, I haven't seen the studies, so I don't know if it's like doing tons of damage.
Well, since you went ahead and you went right down the road of politics, let's get into it. We're recording this February 2025. Let's assume that RFK Jr. ends up being the new Director of Health and Human Services. He's very critical about the food and about production. Let's just go down a few things that I think, whether he becomes the Health and Human Services Director or not, he has, because he's an activist, and activists do a really good job of creating, not always accurate, but they put a spotlight on stuff. One of them was stuff like glyphosate. Are we going to have glyphosate taken away from us because he was one of the original attorneys that sued Monsanto when it was still Monsanto and led that class action suit against what is now Bayer? Do we lose glyphosate in the next 5 years because of what RFK Jr. or future politicians might do?
I couldn't speak specifically to glyphosate. I don't know. I'd have to understand what both sides are going after from what's the lobbyists doing at the EPA, what's RFK going to go after.
Right.
I can see more regulation coming down, right? Stricter application guidelines. I can see where you can only apply it in this window, and that's it.
It's the world's most used herbicide.
Yeah.
For a reason. It does.
It works.
It works a little less than it used to.
Yeah. But it's one of the more efficient things that works.
It's cheap.
Cheap.
It's generally safe, although the RFK crowd says it's not.
Yeah.
It's in your kids' Fruit Loops.
Yeah. The thing that we need to focus
on a 1 part per trillion basis.
Yeah.
There's rat turds in there on a much greater basis in my Fruit Loops than that. But go ahead.
But like my thing would be is, instead of regulating it out of existence, let's find solutions to growers that are economically viable, right? Before we just cut out everything out, all their resources out. Then they can't grow anything, right? And that's we're just going backwards in agriculture, not forward. So instead of regulating it out of existence to where it's like, okay, you can regulate nitrogen, right? But if you regulate nitrogen with no solution, then you're not solving a problem, right? You're just creating another problem. And so trying to find solutions instead of just regulation, that's what I would say we need to do.
Right.
I don't know. Again.
By the way, this is Colton Moon, president of Redox, and right now is where I would normally drop in a Redox commercial, but I don't have to because I'm talking to the president of the company right here. Anyway, if you want to know more about the lineup of bionutrients that Redox makes, you can go to, where do I go?
Redoxgrows.com.
Redoxgrows.com.
Yeah.
And they also have a podcast called the Redox Grows Podcast. I have been a guest on that show a number of times, so go and check that out. But anyway, what about then the other political angle on this? Nutrient in the foods. One thing I'm excited about your generation, you look to be, and the folks younger than you, into more of this. Now, some of it's misguided because, young people like to be sort of activists. There's a movement about the food that we eat, and food is medicine, and we've been eating some pretty crummy stuff and all that.
Yeah.
I think companies that make biologicals, or companies that talk about enhancing nutrient uptake of crops, well, nutrient uptake of crops also means nutrient in the crop, which is then should mean nutrient that we eat.
Yeah.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, definitely a good thing. I think right now, we need to focus on the nutrient analysis of what we're eating, right? And say, okay, does corn have more protein for us, or wheat, or what's the nutrient analysis of an apple that we're eating? We don't sell off of that, right? We should, right? But we don't. And so we need to look at ways that a grower can sell off of a more nutritious, crop.
I just recorded a podcast about that very topic with a guy named Carter Williams and one of my farm friends, and we talked about that. The people at the CME group do not want to think about this because they got really good at just saying a bushel of soybeans is 60 pounds and a bushel of corn is 56 pounds and a bushel of wheat is. They don't even want to think about dissecting, if you will, for nutrient content. It'll add a layer of complexity.
Yeah,
it would also make it so that maybe we don't have 74% of the country that's overweight and 11% of the country that's dying, has got diabetes, etc.
Yeah, I don't know how that side of the industry works. All I know is we need to figure out how to allow growers to gain more profit for what they grow.
Yep.
Right. Right now, it's. I would say right now we're just producing off of just yield, right? Well, if that's all we're going to grow off of, the grower's not really going to if that's all he's going to get paid off of, that
he's going to
focus on it, right? We need to change the parameters of what they should focus on, and then that will change the parameters of how they grow their food.
Your dad's big on this. Can biological products create a healthier end product? Can biological inputs, meaning I'm putting this on a plant, the potato, here we are in Idaho, I'm putting it on those potatoes. Can I use biologicals, and can I use, dare I say, even a lineup that looks more like organic inputs versus the old traditional just, raw chemistry and synthetic fertility to create a more healthy or nutrient dense product?
Yeah, I think you're creating a more nutrient dense product with the application of what I would say, not just biologicals, but biostimulants in general.
Yep.
Right? So I think you're creating a more nutritional crop, but also you're providing a more environmentally sound soil or environment, because you're not just putting pounds on the ground, as they would say, right? But you're managing your fertility program. And look, a soil, there's studies out there where microbial activity happens within centimeters, maybe even millimeters of the root hairs, right? And so what you're doing is what also affects microbial activity, tons of salt, salt is fertilizer, right? So if we put pounds on the ground, you're affecting your microbial activity, you're affecting your root growth, you're affecting a lot, where a plant and a soil have a symbiotic relationship, a synergistic relationship to where they feed off of each other.
Yep.
And you create a more healthy soil by having a more healthier plant.
So we started hearing the term soil health, I'd say within the last 10 years, really maybe within the last 5. I grew up in the farming thing, and I was in FFA, and I was in soil judging, and I wanted to be an agronomist. And we never used the word soil health back in the old days. It became a bigger thing, and that's kind of come about with the rise of the bionutrient type product line, etc. I find it interesting, not hypocrisy, disconnect. When I see all over Twitter or ag podcasts about soil health, I still can drive through the hilly parts of the Midwest where they fall plow and the soil's washing away, or I can go through the Red River Valley, which is flat as a pancake and the soil is amazing, and they still fall plow and all the snow is black because of all the erosion. We're talking about soil health, and we're talking about using products like yours, but we're still not even taking care of the simple stuff.
Correct.
Like stopping erosion.
Yeah, it takes practices as well, I think cover crops have a potential, and looking to have cover crops in there to avoid soil erosion is something to look at as well. It's going to take a multi-effect. It's not just, biostimulants are the save all for the industry. We have to change our practices, the infrastructure. There's a lot to be had in order to change for a more sustainable practice.
There's no question about that. All right, what about the things you talk about soil health? I never even heard about fungi to bacteria ratio until the last couple of years. That's where I think guys like you, your company, and this future, we never even thought about that. And we're still not even close to getting that thing figured out.
No, I would say we're still in the very, very infant stages of figuring out fungi to bacteria ratios.
Do you think it's important?
Yes. I don't know what that looks like, to be 100% transparent, and
nobody brought you on because we said you were an agronomic expert, but
I would say, look, you can. We've tried to find parameters and different measurements to monitor soil health, and we still haven't found a good measurement. Again, I think what we're trying to do is everyone's trying to find this silver bullet for soil health, or this silver bullet for plant health, or this silver bullet for sustainable practices, and it's just not there, right? It's going to take a holistic kind of point of view and practice as a result of many things coming together and changing the industry that way.
So. I think it's I was going to say the word multifaceted.
Yeah.
It's not one thing.
It's not.
And I've also said that organic practices have a place, regenerative practices have a place, and frankly, conventional practices have a place.
Correct.
What about the fact that this has become such a popular thing? You talk about low cost of entry, et cetera, et cetera. Do you think that we should have a little bit more regulation? I mean, other than, like you said, me and 3 guys can go out in my barn and throw together a product and put it in jugs and, like you said, get some kind of analysis of it. We don't even have to have an analysis. We can just make a claim and say it's a plant health enhancer. Mm-hmm. And I see those things out there.
Yeah.
Is it made it better for you because you're legitimized and 30 years in the market, or has it made it harder to cut through the noise? On the one hand, I use the podcast example. Everybody and their sister has a product out there, and I'm like, hey, I've been around a long time. I've got some legitimacy. Or, there's this thing of once you've been around, you have some more credibility. Is it helped or hurt that there's this thing coming? How do you view the marketplace?
I don't view low barrier to entries as like a knock or like a negative. I think where we got to get better at is how do we validate the process or the product in general. Asking a grower to validate it is the wrong thing to do. So what we do is we try to say, okay, take 3 to 5 years to validate the product, because it's not just 1 year.
You mean through trials?
Trials.
Yeah.
Third-party researchers. We do a variety of them. So we do things through our own greenhouse, our own research farm. Take the research and take it serious, right? And don't just do one study and then take that study and then blast market it and that's what works, right? Do intense research on your product. Make sure it works so that a grower doesn't have to do the research for you, right? So then take that process and then take it to the grower, and the grower again wants to do his own testing on his own farm. but make sure you can go to him and say, this is what you need to do, this is how you're going to do it, you know, and then he can see the results himself and measure it without him having to guess or do something like that. So that's where I would say the biostimulant, biological realm kind of frayed a little bit, is not just doing one study and blast marketing it, you know, but taking multi-studies, different researchers, different areas, and validating your technology.
Yeah, but you do need ultimately farmer validation, because obviously that's your customers.
Yes.
So speaking of the customer and the farmer, I've got another thing on this. We got a certain set of customers, the farmer prospects, that are never going to use anything new because they're closed-minded, they do things, you know, whatever. But we've got, I'd say, the top half of the front end of production agriculture is definitely more accepting that things are changing quickly in terms of inputs, or, you know, reduction of nitrogen. They're going to have no choice. I think the smart 25% of the people who are listening to my show are at the front end of this. They're like, yeah, you're right, Damian. We're going to have no choice but to cut this, and this, and this.
Yeah.
So now the sale gets easier. The sale gets easier on alternative crop inputs than it ever has been.
Yeah, because you're still, you know, the grower's still trying. He needs to find solutions, right?
Yep.
A grower can't, you know, in order for a grower to survive in today's world, he's got to get more yield. Yep. And so where's he going to find that? He's got to find that through
reduce costs.
Reduce costs.
Yep.
Yeah, or reduce costs. But he's also got to reduce costs. I think is, my opinion, not the best way to run a business. It's by growing, right? So the best way would be to try to grow your yield, try to find new technology that can do it.
Colton, obviously, one of the things we talk about with my farmer buddies is, you know, this idea, I get it, farmers want to be conservative on the spend, but you know what, you can't save your way into prosperity.
Correct.
You can cut back here and there.
Yeah.
What about the marketplace, speaking of the thing? You know, we've got consolidation of farms, we've got consolidation of retailers. But it hasn't stopped this proliferation of new inputs because they're going direct to consumer, they're using the internet, etc. You talk about barrier of entry. I think it's actually a very good thing because it's open, it's democratized. I don't have to go with what just Nutrien tells me to. I don't have to just go with what one of the big four retailers tells me to do. No,
I think you're right. Like, a grower needs options, not just one conglomerate or 3 to 5 oligarchs, right? It's more so just like making sure, you know, if you're coming into the industry, to validate your process. That's what I would say is the most important, you know, and that's as far as like low barriers of entry. It's not like a knock. I'm not a big regulatory person. I don't want more regulation. I think there's certain aspects of agriculture that's over-regulated, and we need to, you know, pass one new law, but then cut 10 old laws out that affect agriculture in general.
So I want to talk more about where the business goes, and also about consolidation of farms, and also some of the attributes of where crop inputs are going. Before I do that, I want to remind you, if you're listening or watching, again, we're coming to you live from recorded from Burley, Idaho. A company that's come on board here is called Grip Ag. Grip is, if you have a farming operation and you've got a whole bunch of employees, let's say you're a larger agricultural business corporation, you know what, you've got people here, there, and everywhere. How are you communicating? Are you doing it with text? Are you doing Post-it notes? Well, it's time to get to the new century. Grip is a company that can help you. You know what? It's not an app. It's not a website. You just put it on your phone, and all of a sudden, it's got Spanish to English translation. It's so easy. Your 77-year-old grandparent that still uses a flip phone can make this work. So anyway, you go to grip.ag and you use the promotion code Damian20, my name, Damian20. You'll get 20% off. And they have 3 different packages. You're not going to break the bank. You're not going to be in a long-term subscription. And all of a sudden, you can use this technology on your farm to make communication and inventory management and database management much more simple on your operation. Go check it out, grip.ag. That's GRIPP.ag. Colton, here's the question. You're kind of coming this age when everything is changing, but we're going to see consolidation. We know that the farm economy situation is a little bit tight right now. That has historically created more consolidation.
Yeah.
But also in the last 100 years, the story has been consolidation.
Yeah.
Is that good for ag input companies? Now you have the same number of acres but less decision makers, or is it bad because they're going to be less willing to try the new product you come up with? Good for innovation, bad for innovation, good for sales, bad for sales. I want you to give it both directions.
So I would say consolidation usually probably not the best for innovation, right? Because what you're just trying to streamline. Yeah, you're just trying to streamline. Make sure at that point you're just managing expenses, right? So
Typically, that becomes
right.
larger scale.
Yeah.
The company that makes aluminum siding is let's make the cheap aluminum siding we can.
If you have 10,000 acres of something, to sit there and analyze each field and make sure that you're trying to be innovative and say, okay, this field needs this and this field, that's impossible to do. And so I think typically bad for overall innovation. As far as sales, I would say it's about who you know, not necessarily what you know in that process. If for a consolidation, and so if you know the right people, it can help. If you don't know the right people, then you're kind of barred out. So that's how I would view consolidation.
Generally bad for trying new stuff because they get to where they're just low cost producers.
Yes.
But then again, what do you think from the business standpoint?
From the business standpoint, for us, I would say mid-size is good, right? That mid-size family run, not too big to where I'm just trying to streamline my operation, but I still have my teeth synced into the operation. I still know what I'm doing on the field. Yeah, that's where you want. Do you think
that ag retail goes away? Do you sell your stuff through retailers? You do.
Yeah.
I
think it's going to have to adapt. I think I've seen ag retailers even over the past 20 years adapt to certain different models. I would say that is a very depending question. Very dependent upon what they have to adapt to, retailers. So.
I brought you on here to go ahead and just give me your opinions. You're less opinionated than your old man. Your old man has no problem taking stances and being opinionated.
My dad doesn't. My dad has an opinion. I'm more. I don't know. Maybe diplomatic's the wrong word, but
he gave me this awesome pin with a gun and bullet motif.
To kind of go to your question, though, it's hard to say whether retail goes away or not. They're looking at the future too.
Sure, they are.
And they're saying, okay, how do I survive this future? Either I consolidate with a larger retailer, which we have seen.
Well, yes.
Right.
Yeah, or a whole bunch less ag retailers.
Yes, correct. Or I adapt to the marketplace. I don't know what I'm not into their, what they're thinking right now. Mm-hmm. I do know that there's some that have adapted very well, and I can see them being here for the next at least minimum 5 to 10 years,
But eventually, first off, you've got a whole bunch more players in crop inputs, and then you've also got a expanding group of producers in terms of, their size. Less consolidation of farms, but they get larger. You could see a bunch of I make this product, I'm just going to sell direct to them.
Yeah, but you can adapt in certain ways as well as a retailer, right? So as a PCA in California, you're not just sitting there selling product, right? You're writing recommendations. And you're sticking your neck out for that orchard right there and saying, okay, here's the nitrogen management program, here's the pesticide management program,
right.
And then you sign your name at the bottom. You're taking the risk as the retailer, and so I could see them adapting to being more stewards of the program itself for the growers, so that then the grower can then go to a packing house or to whoever they need to go to sell their product to.
And since I have listeners all over the country, as I always reference, the cranberry bog operator in Massachusetts says, what's he talking about, PCA? Pest Control Advisor,
right?
And California has a tremendous amount more regulation. So you're, and I'm not bashing any other state, but compared to many of the other states, in California, for you to be putting something out on an orchard, it's going to have a lot more prescriptive.
Correct. It's a prescriptive base. It's like a doctor writing a prescription for you, right?
Yeah.
You can't go to the pharmacy and buy what you have without the prescription. That's the same way what a PCA is in California. He's writing the recommendation. He has to get his license. He has to get a CCA license. So sorry, I know more about California and its operation.
Because you're in specialty crops. And I should also point out that California Association of Pest Control Advisors has been a client of mine. By the way, if you're listening to this, it's time to bring me back. It's been like a decade, so you know what? I got a lot of new stuff. So bring me back. I was in one of my favorite parts of California, Monterey, for their program, and I love working with those people. Yeah. So speaking of which, you're talking about you got a lot familiar with California. I think it's a neat story. You guys started in specialty crop, then to turf, and then to more broad acre agriculture. The viewer can't see this. By the way, if you're listening and you're not a viewer, I encourage you to go to my YouTube channel. I'm really putting a big push on it in 2025 because I never did, and I want you to be more subscribed. So go to the Damian Mason YouTube channel. Just go to YouTube, type in Damian Mason, hit subscribe. It costs you nothing. And you know what? All my cool videos. I put a commentary video out there just yesterday about a Super Bowl commercial and its impact of what it's showing us about agriculture, which we're going to get to that in a moment as well. Anyway, there's here in the Redox conference room, I'm looking down there and I see an electronic mural. And I've got orchards, I got potatoes, I got corn, I've got turf, I've got grapes, and I've got tree nuts, and I've got strawberries. You guys cover a lot of bases. Tell me what you've learned from each of those things, because my row crop guys in extreme ag say, you know what, when I want to look at where cutting edge stuff is happening, I go to specialty crop because they're better at each acre in terms of their focus, because they're not covering 10,000 acres. Why don't you tell me your perspective on all that?
Oh, that's a loaded question. I would say
who's the most? Is it true specialty crop people are more innovative than broadacre because they have to be? Because they're small.
I haven't seen that necessarily. I see niches of each one, right? So there's actually some innovation in the Midwest where broad acreage crops are, where it's like, man, they're more advanced on some of even the regulation portions than even California is.
I like it when you say good things about the Midwest. I'm a Midwest guy, you know.
So I would say it's not just one or the other. You can see and say, okay, yeah, like as far as taking biostimulant technology and implementing it into the marketplace, Midwest has been a lot more open to it. You know, where your specialty crops are, they have their quality, right? And it's like, if you mess up with their quality, right, they don't really want to mess with that. And so it's a little bit more nuanced in the specialty crop versus the Midwest. Whereas,
trees. Tell me about trees. What do I need to know about trees? What's different about trees? Because I have tree people that listen to this, and the Almond Alliance has been a client of mine for speaking engagements. I love it. I think it's neat as all hell. You've got apples out here. You've got an orchard simulation out here in one of your fields. So what do I need to know about trees? Are they going to use? The question I asked was, are they already using a lot less inputs?
Yeah. Yes. They need to. They are. And I think you'll see them start. Well, first off, they're going to be regulated too. Where's most of your specialty crops? California, Oregon, Washington,
Western coast, and Florida to a degree.
Yeah, Florida to a degree, but even Florida is it's surprisingly regulated when it comes to nutritional management programs. And so number one, they're going to be regulated too. I would say that California has the most aggressive nitrogen management regulation up to this point, right? So yes, they're going to have to adapt or go towards some of these biostimulant technologies, because that's how you're going to get those keep the yield with reducing the yield, fertility. But also what you might see is you might see better quality too, right? So nitrogen's a great fertilizer, right? But what people don't talk about also is the bads that it also has with it if you apply too much, right? You can reduce your quality, right? You can reduce the amount of impact of root and soil microbial activity. And so when you just reduce a little bit of nitrogen, you also can improve your overall quality, whether it's in an apple, right, to not make it so mushy, or whether it's in almond. Like whole rot is a big thing in almonds. What they're finding, or what they have found, is that too much nitrogen
can lead to more whole rot, and so it's kind of like, okay, we got to have a better nitrogen management program in almonds as well.
Which this is a perfect segue. I was going to say, I am increasingly, and I've done some work with some other entities, and we talk about calibrated agronomy is a great one. We brought on a guy that talked about, and he says something that's very controversial. He says, healthy plants don't get eaten by insects. Oh, you tell a room full of farmers that, and they're like, you only need insecticides if your plant health sucks. Mm-hmm. So he puts them on the defensive. I'm guessing what you're going to tell me is overuse of nitrogen caused hull rot in almonds, and the answer was go spray a bunch of fungicide on it?
Yeah, typically, yeah.
And you could have just, in other words...
It's not just the only thing, right? But it's one of the causes,
but
right?
Would you say that there's a real nice revolution going on where we're understanding maybe we don't need as many insecticides and fungicides if we actually start with plant health?
Yeah, correct. Simplest point, yes. So yes, if you focus on a better nutritional management program,
yep.
You potentially could reduce the amount of
pesticides. Fungicide.
Darren's whole story, right? The beginning of how he started was based off of that one thing, his quest to, he worked on a large table grape operation down in Southern California, and the owner wanted to go full on organic, right? And told Darren, like, that's your job.
Darren's his dad, by the way. Darren's his dad, by the way. Yeah. All right.
Yeah, and that was Darren's job.
Was to help me convert to organic.
And what he found was it's not just organic, and it's not just, conventional, but like we said earlier, it's a middle ground. And he was able to reduce his pesticide inputs by how he managed his crop program. And that's the simplest way, is just managing your nutritional and your fertilizer program can also help you reduce the amount of...
Was that the genesis then of what we're doing here now 30 years later?
Yeah,
sitting
correct.
in this boardroom?
Yeah, he learned a lot from his farm management practices back in California. His dad passed away from cancer. And so he decided to move back to Idaho and took ideas, worked with a professor out of Utah State, created some patents on some products, and that revolutionized into
And the story also goes that part of the impetus was your grandfather dying of cancer. There was a certain belief that this had to do with overutilization of those old harsh chemistries that we used to use.
Yeah, like Darren, he talks about, like, never smoked, never drank, never did anything other than tried to live a healthy lifestyle, and yet still had cancer at a young age. And so it's kind of like, okay, is there a way to maybe what you're eating be more healthy so that you can avoid some of these health problems later in life?
So I asked a question up front about what are we going to use less in the future. I believe that is the case. I believe that the USDA policy is going to reflect that, whether it's in this farm bill that we've been waiting on for 2 years or future farm bills. Do you agree?
Yes. I think whether whoever's in office, regulation is going to happen, and it's going to continue to happen, right?
And we hope it's incentive, not stick.
Correct. That's what I hope, is that it incentivizes it. It's sustainable is also economical, right? Economical.
Reduce synthetic fertility, reduce chemistry, reduce the harsh stuff, but also, by golly, we're not going to try and do it to where then you cut your yield by 80% because then you go broke, and now what do we got?
Correct.
And we have a food shortage at that point, which would be really bad.
Correct. And so, I think regulations is going to happen. Hopefully they give time for new technology to answer the call, right? And then also provide an economic benefit to the supply chain. I'd say to the supply chain. If it needs to work for manufacturer, for suppliers, for growers, all the way down the line. So.
You took a whole bunch of notes here, Mr. Colton.
Yeah, I did.
Did you?
I don't know if we got through all of them or not.
You might be the most prepared guest I've had in 390 episodes. Is there anything on here that you really would think we need to know? Because I know the topic. You and I both agree, but it gets a lot of people concerned. Oh my God, they're going to take this away from me. But I don't think we're going to take away stuff in such fast fashion that it causes panic.
No, I don't think that they'll do that. I think that they'll start with something, and first off, we'll see what happens over the next month. A lot's going to happen, right?
Yeah, and we're recording this on February 12th, we should say. Yeah.
Correct. And so we'll see what happens, and then they'll give time for people to adapt.
Technically it's the 11th. Technically it's February 11th.
Yeah.
Now that's the last thing. If we think that there's going to be some carrot and stick, USDA, you're going to cut back on some of these harsher things, chemistry-wise, you're going to use less synthetic fertility. Is there a regulatory thing that's good or bad for a company like yours? Is it good, but then also, is there going to be bad that quantities? Is there anything that you worry or concern yourself about as a company? Is there anything do you have any bullseye on your back, any crosshairs on you?
I think
in the bionutrient area?
The answer is yes. I think because of the market share that we've developed, because of the low barriers to entry, right? The target is okay, what do we have, and let's go after what Redox has.
Those are from competitive companies, but you don't think the USDA or the EPA are all of a sudden going to be a risk factor for you guys because you're not touching anything that's...
Not right now, no. I don't think regulation-wise. Do I think we need to look at the regulation that has existed? I think I think we've pieced together FIFRA at this point, right? Which FIFRA is the EPA for where they manage pesticides. I think we need to break that apart and redo it. I don't think that's ever going to happen. That's a wishful thinking, but I think
I don't know. As we record this, there's a flamethrower being taken to Washington D.C. bureaucracy right now. So hell, who knows?
Who knows? I just think that there's a lot that we need to look at deep down inside from a regulation standpoint, but right now I don't see anything on our end.
Last question. So BioNutrients, they've got, I think, a big run here based on what you and I both think. There's going to be some winners, going to be some losers because there's so many out there. 5 years from now when you and I visit, how many of these 2,000 companies that are in the space are still with us?
I think they'll dwindle out.
It's not a number.
Yeah.
It's like when I ask you how much money do you have and you say a lot. I need a number. There's 2,000 companies right now. How many of them go away? More than half?
More than half.
I agree.
I think more than half will go away through a variety of being bought out, being, going out of business, variety of situations will happen, right? But I think it'll be more than half will go away.
I agree. So, in fact, I could see that happening in the next 2 years, not 5.
Well, and also where's the VC money? A lot of it's being dumped into here. Eventually that goes away.
The venture capital money literally poured in for a number of years, and it's my understanding it's drying up pretty in this space.
Yeah, it's drying up, and they're going to be calling for their return, and they're going to find another space to climb into.
And it looks like ag tech had its big run of capital, and it's almost getting a little bit dry. So I'm not sure where the next spot in ag investment is.
I don't know either. I wish I had a crystal ball to see where it would be.
Then we'd be there, wouldn't
we would.
His name's Colton Moon. My name's Damian Mason. This has been a great conversation. He has like 6 pages of notes. He's the most prepared guest I've had in probably 390 episodes almost. You're the most prepared.
I don't know if I sound prepared, but
you sounded really good. Anyway, we're coming at you from their headquarters in Burley, Idaho. You know that Redox is a sponsor, and no, we didn't make this an infomercial. We made it a very live and fun and forward-looking discussion about the future of these kinds of products. And you know what? The environmental regulation, which we both believe is going to continue to intensify. And it doesn't even matter, I don't think, who's in office necessarily. I just think that this has been it's been this way for a long time.
Yeah, been this way for a long time, and I think where you're going to find it is it's going to be state regulated.
And that makes it a little bit more challenging.
More challenging.
Because now it's a patchwork.
Correct.
California's got this, and then Indiana has that.
Yeah. So.
But anyway, you were very confident of the Midwest. I appreciate that. Anyway, so next time, thanks for being here. I'm Damian Mason, and this is The Business of Agriculture. Hey, sincere thanks for joining us here on another episode of The Business of Agriculture. I want to ask you, if you farm, are you looking for more productive efficiencies to grow higher yielding, better performing crops? Well, of course you are. New Fields Ag provides a complete portfolio of biological products focused on you, the farmer. If you want to learn more about the New Fields Ag product lineup, go to newfieldsag.com for information.